The church exists in order to evangelize. And my mission as a bishop too is have a teaching mission to present the fullness of the truth of the Catholic faith. So those two words encapsulated my vision, grace and truth, and they remain sort of foundational to the way I understand my identity.
Archbishop Julian, congratulations on reaching this wonderful milestone of 50 years of priesthood.
Thank you.
50 years is a very long time. It's half a century. You would have witnessed a lot of change in the church and in society during that time. I'm just wondering if over 50 years you ever had any doubt that you chose the right path in the priesthood.
No, I've always felt that this is God's call on my life, and so I haven't felt it was something that I chose, or a career that I was interested in, or anything like that. It's always been at the foundation of my understanding of being a priest is that this is what God has asked me to do with my life.
Mm-hmm. Now, you first felt the call to priesthood at a very early age. I think you're in grade 5 or 6 at school. Tell me what happened there.
Yes, it was in the latter years of my primary school, and we had the practice and were encouraged to make a visit to the chapel in the school when we first arrived at school. So I did that. I distinctly remember one morning going into the chapel and kneeling down at the altar, just to say a brief prayer. And the words came in my head very, very simply, very clearly, "One day you will be a priest." And those words just stayed with me, and I see that now as my moment of calling. And then right through high school, the idea of becoming a priest was something which remained with me, and so I then carried that thought of entering the priesthood upon completing high school as really my vocation in life.
Mm-hmm. And when you heard those words in your mind, was there ever any doubt that that was coming from God?
Well, look, at the time I didn't make that connection. I think that all came later when I was able to understand things more clearly. But it was very clear in my mind, this thought, these words, and I accepted them and had no resistance to them. And when vocation directors came to the school, I would speak with them and so forth. So it was something that was just in me to do, and I just never really doubted. Now, subsequently, I can look back and say, I can understand this was the moment when God did actually call me. Mm-hmm. But at that stage, at that age, it was something which was just a thought in my mind.
Mm-hmm. Now, you entered the seminary in 1969 and you went straight into seminary from school. So that kind of indicates there was no real doubts there. Was there any desire to experience life before that, or not really at all?
I think because the thought was very clear, this was what I was going to do. So when I completed, I didn't tell a lot of people about it. I told my parents, and I didn't say a lot to my schoolmates about it. But it was just in my mind that this is what I was going to do. So when high school finished, I then made application to join the seminary as a seminarian for the Archdiocese of Sydney.
Mm-hmm. Now, as you say, you had a strong focus on young people, and I know that you organised lots of missions and rallies for young Catholics where you focused very much on forming them in the faith and equipping them to go out and evangelize. Why did you focus so strongly on that?
Look, I think that was very significant. When I, as I said, when I began, I had a group of young university students, and we were meeting regularly and so on. But one thing that happened to me as a young priest that was very important was I was reading an exhortation of Pope Paul VI called Evangelii Nunciandi, and there was a phrase in that really struck me, where he said, "The church exists in order to evangelize." That was a very significant moment for me, a discovery. I remember just thinking, Yes, that's really what we're about. That's really what the church is meant to be about. And I had we had another change of parish priest, and the second parish priest was very good in the whole area of renewal in the church and so on. And I remember talking to him about this and my conviction that I really should be focusing more on evangelization of young people. And so he very, very much encouraged me. And what I decided to do was to have a mission just for young people. He actually recommended a young evangelist from, a Catholic evangelist from Brisbane called Shane Bennett. He knew him. He said he could be good to give the mission. So we had this mission in the parish hall over a week, and we got quite a few young people coming along to it. Mainly post-school young people. But out of that, they too had a moment of grace. And so a core of young people developed in the parish who were really alive in their faith, and from there it evolved quite extraordinarily. And I felt that somehow I was being as much guided by the Holy Spirit as having any kind of pastoral strategy or pastoral plan. We used to meet on Sunday afternoons. We'd have a prayer meeting, and then we used to animate the Mass with the music and the readers and so on. And then we'd have a time we call it fellowship time after Mass in the parish hall. And the group grew and grew and grew to probably reaching about 80 in number. And we also started forming small sharing groups. Young people would come together in groups during the week and have sharing their Christian life, praying together, praying for each other, and so on. So all that was a quite an extraordinary experience for me. And again, I keep using the word grace because I felt somehow there was a grace at work in all of this that was well beyond my own skills and talents and understandings. But I witnessed just extraordinary things happening in the lives of young people, and it really confirmed this idea that that this needs to be the focus for the church's ministry, and this needs to be a particular focus for my own ministry. So when I was moved to my second parish, which was Manly Parish, I remember I was visiting a family, and they were just talking one night, and the father said he had a couple of young daughters, and he said, "What are you going to do? What are you going to do about youth? In the parish?" I'd only been there for a relatively short time. And of course, I thought immediately of what I did in Kingsgrove, and I thought, well, I'll put on a parish mission. And then he said to me, he said, if you put it on the parish hall, you'll attract all the kind of the Catholic kids, the good kids, they'll come along. And I thought he's right. So I said, right, we'll put it out in the open. So I put it on an oval, Manly Oval, and we held it. And then there was a fellow who was an advertising man, and I was talking to him about it, and he said you should call it Jesus Christ at Manly Oval. So really in your face, kind of statement about who we are, what we're about. So we got musicians. I invited Shane Bender to come down again. I spoke at the rally, and thousands turned up. Thousands turned up, and many people there again had very significant spiritual experiences. So that was a whole area of my priestly ministry that certainly I'd never envisaged I would be involved with, but it became something that was really at the heart of what I was doing as a priest.
So, Your Grace, you were appointed an auxiliary bishop for Sydney in 2003. What was your immediate reaction when you found out you'd been appointed a bishop?
Well, it came out of the blue, and it came a complete surprise. I was a rector of the seminary in Sydney at that stage, and the secretary told me that there was a a phone call for me one morning, and they said it was somebody with a strange accent. And so I went and picked up the phone. It was the Apostolic Nuncio, who was Italian and had a heavy accent. And he informed me that Pope John Paul II had appointed me as an auxiliary bishop in Sydney. Now, that was a surprise, firstly, that I would be chosen to be a bishop. But secondly, I was thinking, but I was about 18 months as rector of the seminary, and I thought, oh, but I've just become rector of the seminary, I've just hardly begun my term. I remember going to Cardinal Pell and saying to him that, appointed auxiliary bishop, and saying to him, look, but I've just been made rector, and the Cardinal just simply said, oh, you're doing them both, you're going to continue to be rector, but you're being an auxiliary bishop. Look, it was I remember going to the chapel afterwards and just kneeling down and saying, Lord, what have you done? It was a great surprise for me. It was overwhelming, really was overwhelming, and I felt inadequate. I felt this was asking something beyond my capacity. But I felt, I talked to Cardinal Pell about it, and he said, look, the Pope's chosen you, so give your answer. So I then said I would accept the role of being auxiliary bishop in Sydney.
And why did you choose grace and truth as your episcopal motto?
Look, I don't know how it came to me, but certainly it was something that immediately was to me to be my motto, gratia et veritas, grace and truth. It's based in St John's Gospel, John chapter 1, verse 17, where St John says, Christ came full of grace and truth. Now, the two words were significant for me personally in terms of my own journey over the years. The whole idea of grace for me was, as I did speak about earlier on, about my moment of grace, that sense of God's immediate presence and action, God's love in my life. So I was very conscious that the Christian life it's a life of grace, and that I saw my mission as one of helping others come under the grace of God, come under ultimately the grace of salvation. So I saw that as my mission. But also in the years that had followed, I became more conscious of the challenges of truth in our times. And so I was aware that Christ came to present the truth. He said, I am the truth. And I realised that part of my mission as a bishop too, is to have a teaching mission and to present the fullness of the truth of the Catholic faith. So those two words encapsulated my vision for now my mission as a bishop. So grace and truth, and they remain sort of foundational to the way I understand my identity.
Mm-hmm. Now, in 2013, you received another phone call from the nuncio to tell you you had been appointed Archbishop of Hobart. What did you think when you first heard that news?
Yeah, well, that came at a very unusual time. I was packing to go to the World Youth Day in Rio de Janeiro, and I was taking a group of, I think, about 30 or 40 young people from Sydney up to a place called Fortaleza, which is right up in the north of Brazil. There was it was a particular pilgrimage that I'd been organising because there was a lay community up there that I was very impressed with, Shalom community, very impressive community. So I thought it'd be good for the young people to see this community in Fortaleza. And so I was busy packing and organising to go to the World Youth Day, and I received a phone call from the Nuncio's office saying that Nuncio wanted to see me, and I explained, well, I'm packing to go. This is a Friday. I was packing to go, I think, on the Sunday to head off. And so the nuncio said, well, can you come down straight away? So I had a few things on. I cancelled those. So I hopped in the car in Sydney and drove down to Canberra and met the nuncio there. And he came in holding a fax to say, said that he received this fax last night. That Pope Francis has appointed me as Archbishop of Hobart. And so So I said, because normally you have a few days to reflect and then provide your response. But I said to him, I'm about to go across to Brazil. And so he said, well, maybe you better write it now. So he just gave me a piece of paper. So I wrote my letter to the Holy Father saying I'll accept the role as Archbishop of Hobart.
Right. And what was your knowledge about Tasmania at that point?
Well, my main knowledge of Tasmania was the fact that I had been down here a number of times on bushwalks. I'd done the Cradle Mountain Walk on a number of occasions and done other bushwalks. I'd actually also cycled around Tasmania as a young priest. So I knew Tasmania more as a holiday destination, if you like. I didn't know much about the church in Tasmania. So it was a surprise to be appointed down here to Tasmania.
Yes. So you were installed as Archbishop on the 17th of September 2013. What was your main focus coming into the role?
Coming down here, I obviously I was reflecting and praying. I did have a sense as I was coming down here of a certain. One says I felt myself coming down more like a missionary bishop, but just a sense of mission was very high on my agenda. As you know, I've always felt very strongly the call to evangelize, and so that was I think very much in my mind coming down here in that sense of exercising a role of evangelization in Tasmania.
Now, in 2015, you distributed a booklet called Don't Mess with Marriage, which was written by the Australian Catholic Bishops' Conference, and you distributed that to parishes and schools around Tasmania. And subsequently, a complaint was lodged against you to the Anti-Discrimination Commission. Just tell me, what was that experience like, and did you ever expect something like that to happen?
Yes, as the debate around changing the definition of marriage to allow same-sex couples to be married, I was aware that we did need as a bishop to help explain to people why the church believed that marriage should be between a man and a woman. And this document had been prepared by the Bishops' Conference. So I saw it as simply that my role as a bishop was to teach and explain Catholic teaching. And I thought this booklet was very balanced and clear in its presentation. So I decided to distribute it in the parishes, but I also was aware that it would be useful if we could get it out to families who maybe not practicing the faith, but who send their children to Catholic schools. So send out copies also to schools and ask schools to distribute it. And I saw it mainly as a way of helping people in the midst of this debate to understand what the church understood about the nature of marriage. But it did elicit some strong reactions and including a complaint which was lodged against me. So then I was requested to engage in a process with the Anti-Discrimination Commission here in Tasmania.
And this goes back to what you mentioned earlier about the role of a bishop, which needing to be able to speak out in defence of the faith and so forth, does it not?
Yes, one of the things that was interesting, I did receive a lot of emails critical of the stance that I'd taken, but I got more emails from people thanking me for speaking out, because I was very conscious of the fact that while we as the church have been engaged in discussions with government and making representations to government and working with other churches in speaking with government, we've been doing all of that, if you like, behind the scenes. But I was aware that people could feel that the church was not really taking a clear stand on this, and I felt that there was a need to express clearly our concern as a bishop. I wrote the pastoral letter as the Archbishop of Hobart. So it was my direct concern about preserving the integrity of our Catholic schools here in Tasmania.
Yes. Now, as Archbishop of Hobart, I know you're focused very strongly on seeking to build up the faith amongst Catholics here. Tell me about the various initiatives that you've put forward over the years to help do that.
Yes, as I said before, I was aware, I discovered coming here that we really need to do things to animate the faith of Catholics. I think firstly we needed to see what we could do to help the Catholics who are active in the life of the church to grow stronger in faith. So, for instance, I began a Eucharistic procession here on Corpus Christi, as I'd done in Sydney. When we had the 100th anniversary of the apparitions of Our Lady at Fatima, so in 2017, I took the opportunity to have a consecration of Tasmania to the Immaculate Heart of Mary. So, paralleling what the messages that Mary had given back 100 years ago, and invoking Mary's intercession for Tasmania. Similarly, a couple of years later, we had the year of St. Joseph, which was called by the Holy Father, and I became aware of the idea of invoking the patronage of St. Joseph over the church. So at the end of that year, we had a dedication of the Church of Tasmania under the patronage of St. Joseph. I think those spiritual things are very important. It is a spiritual battle that we're engaged in, and so calling down the grace of God, calling down, seeking the intercession of Blessed Virgin Mary, seeking the patronage of St. Joseph, for me were important things to do to help strengthen the faith of the church here in Tasmania. But also I was doing a lot of other practical things for a number of years. A couple of years I used to go to parishes and put on a one-night mission in the parish. It was just a simple. We had some music, some testimony. I'd preach. We'd have the exposition of the Blessed Sacrament, and confessions would be available, and then I'd be available to pray with people. I was just trying to nurture people's personal faith, draw them closer to Christ, draw them into a stronger life of faith. So I was always looking for ways, keen to promote Divine Mercy Sundays, and I was always very committed to that each year. So just trying to find ways that I could help the Catholic people, firstly, be strengthened and deepened in their faith. And certainly I was very keen to encourage adoration of the Blessed Sacrament in churches, and also Marian devotion in various ways, rosary and so on. I think these things are very important. Just the Catholics live a spiritual life, a strong spiritual life. So I was just trying to find ways to encourage that. Certainly, I was very keen that the liturgy that was celebrated, say in the cathedral here, was something which was spiritually enriching for people. So I'd put a focus. I was very interested in the quality of the 10:30 Mass that I would normally celebrate in the cathedral. I did have a chance later on of doing some renovations in the cathedral, which are actually still continuing, still doing some more things to help the cathedral being a place where one senses this. It's a sacred place. And people's sense of reverence and prayer are enriched by their coming to the church. So trying to find ways that we just could nourish and nurture the spiritual life of Catholics was probably an initial key focus, and remains a key focus. But also I'm also interested in how we can become more missionary oriented, how we can be reaching out to people.
And how would you summarise the 50 years of priesthood that you've experienced?
There's a phrase from the letter to the Ephesians, which I think sort of summarises my life and my priesthood and my role as bishop, and that where it just simply says, it is by grace you are saved through faith. I'm just very conscious of grace. I'm very aware that I need salvation, and I want to place myself under the mercy of God, under the grace of God. Living a life of faith is the means by which I can invoke God's grace in my life. And so I feel that sort of summarises how I've tried to live my life. Living a life of faith that has meant the grace of God has been present and active in my life.
And has your understanding of the priesthood changed over that 50 years?
I certainly think it's been enriched. Yeah. I think now, after 50 years a priest, I think the thing for me more than anything else is the priest is one who stands in the presence of God for the people and really with the people and for the people, and invokes God's grace and mercy upon the community of believers, but more broadly upon the world. So in a way, for me, the most important moment for me is standing at the altar as a priest. And I think more than anything else, that's what I feel, that it's what God can do in and through the priesthood, in and through the church. That is the most important thing. And we have to be just available to be servants of what God wants to do.
And looking back over 50 years of priesthood, what are you most grateful for?
I'm just grateful for the call. I'm very content to have served as a priest, and grateful to God for his presence and guidance and somehow getting me there.
Well, thank you very much, Your Grace, for your time today. It's been a real honour and a privilege to hear about your reflections from 50 years of priesthood. And I just want to say congratulations once again on your Golden Jubilee.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Catherine.